You're listening to Docs Outside the Box, Episode 1.
Welcome to Docs Outside the Box podcast. This is your official show, looking inside the minds of cutting-edge and innovative doctors. Think you'll find these stories in any medical textbook? Sorry. You're getting real life insight from men and women pushing the envelope beyond medicine. Ordinary doctors doing extraordinary things. Let's start now with your host, Dr. Nii Darko.
All right, everyone. Welcome to my new podcast. It's called Docs Outside the Box, and this is my first podcast, my first ever podcast, and I'm really excited about it, okay? Let me give you a little bit of a introduction as to who I am. My name is Dr. Nii Darko, and I'm a trauma surgeon located in Central PA. Just a little bit about myself. I did my medical school in Kansas City, Missouri at the Kansas City University of Medicine and Biosciences, and got a little bit of crazy with degrees. And not only did I get my osteopathic degree, but I also got a MBA in healthcare leadership. And then from there, I went down to Hotlanta, and I spent the next 5 years doing a general surgery residency with the Morehouse School of Medicine. And then after that, I decided to go down to Miami, and I spent a year down there doing a trauma critical care fellowship. So after all those years of training, all those years of delayed gratification from being a pre-med to getting into medical school, delaying gratification then until you get into residency, and then getting into fellowship and doing more delayed gratification, then the next step for me was I had to find a job. Problem though is I did so many different interviews, and I interviewed at these places. You spend 4 to 6 hours at this hospital, and then all of a sudden, bam, they hand you this contract, and it's signed this contract here for 3, maybe even 5 years. And I had a hard time, grasping that concept of, okay, I'm going to spend the next 3 to 5 years of my life with you based off of a 4 to 6 hour, interview. It just didn't seem right to me. So I decided to do a short stint of locum tenens. Okay. And what turned out to be a short stint turned out to be about 1.5 years of locum tenens for me. I ended up doing jobs in Pennsylvania, where I am currently located. But I also did some jobs in Minnesota. I did some jobs in Idaho. I did a bunch of different jobs all over the place. And you know what? I ended up meeting doctors from both spectrums. And what I mean by that is, there were physicians who were at the end of their career and they were getting ready to retire. There were physicians who were just like me, who were getting ready to start. And then there were also physicians who just were very frustrated with their careers and didn't want to be employed anymore. So they were doing locums. So I met physicians at both ends of the spectrum. And, whatever their story was, I realized that the ones that really resonated with me were the really interesting, non-traditional type stories, those who were living literally outside the box. Some of these doctors were doing things like doing medical mission work, particularly in West Africa at the height of the Ebola scare. Some people were doing things like writing for blogs, writing for newspapers, just exciting things like running businesses. One was even a medical consultant, for a pretty popular show on CBS. And basically what I thought to myself was, man, I really wish I had been exposed to these type of stories, these type of doctors, so I could pick their brain when I was a pre-med student or even when I was in medical school. Because, who knows? I may have changed direction. I may have done something different. I'm a bit of a tech type nerd type guy. And, who's to say I may have would have gone in a different direction or done something differently had I known that you can do these type of things earlier on. But just to bring things back, I was just about to go on too much of a tangent, but just to bring things back and let you know the moral of that story. The moral is that, look, if I'm feeling like this, if I'm really feeling like this, I can't be the only one in the entire world who feels the same way. I mean, these stories really need to be brought out to the masses. Real talk. It's my hope to bring you interviews with up and coming, exciting, dynamic, creative docs who are literally thriving off the beaten path. All right. These interviews that you're going to hear, these discussions, they should inspire you to do what you always wanted to do, but either talk yourself out of it. Your schedule gets in the way, you got too many patients one day, or look, life just got in the way. All right. So look, ultimately this podcast is for you. All right, listeners, I know it's recorded, and although it's recorded, you still have a say on who's going to be on the show. So what I hope to gain from you is, look, not only your interests, that'd be great, but look, I really need your comments. Okay, so whether they're good, whether they're bad, I'm a big boy. Plus, I did a general surgery residency, so let's be real. I mean, I can take the criticism. So leave your comments on iTunes, leave your comments on Stitcher Radio, or just tweet me directly at DocsOTB. And you never know. You may see some changes. So look, enough talking. Let's get on with the show, okay? There are so many adjectives that you can use to describe my first guest. You can use, you can use jet setter. You can use world traveler, explorer. You can use crazy. But whatever adjective you want to use to describe my first guest, be sure to add Doc outside the box. You're going to be hearing from Dr. Carmen Brown, who's an obstetrician who practices with her husband, who's also an anesthesiologist, all the way down under in New Zealand. I was actually introduced to Dr. Carmen Brown by my wife. They connected on a Facebook group called Mocha Docs. Some of you all who are listening right now know exactly what I'm talking about. But it's a Facebook group where women physicians of color, they connect, they interact. They also network with each other on a daily basis. So Dr. Brown's story of her life in New Zealand really resonated with my wife to the point where my wife actually passed along her contact information to me and thought that she'd be an excellent guest for the show. I contacted her and, the rest is history. So in this episode, I'm really excited to bring this episode to you, not just because she's, my first podcast guest, but also because of the perspective that she's going to bring to the show. In this show, you're going to learn how a woman from Southwest Atlanta basically became frustrated with her work-life balance as an obstetrician. And actually, the key words should be actually lack thereof of a work-life balance. But basically, this frustration led her and her husband on a world tour, eventually ending up in New Zealand. Make sure you pick up on the part about the financial preparation that was needed to do something like this, okay? And also, she's going to talk about the differences, the similarities between the U.S. and the New Zealand healthcare system. Also, we're going to get down to the nitty-gritty. I'm going to ask her, look, what's diversity like in New Zealand? And is there any difference between New Zealand and the United States? What's it like to be an African-American woman physician who's practicing in New Zealand? She's also going to give tips for you all physicians who are on the fence about something like this, but just maybe a little bit too scared to do something. All right. So I know some of you all are like, look, would you just get with the show? Get on with it. All right. I hear you. So look, without further ado, I introduce you to the one, the only Dr. Carmen Brown. Hi, Dr. Carmen Brown.
Yes. Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. Is it morning over there?
It is actually. I'm sorry.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us on the Docs Outside the Box podcast. You are our first guest, first victim,
Wonderful.
I guess.
This sounds great.
The inaugural episode of Doctors Outside the Box. So I just wanted to thank you for joining us. I know you are in New Zealand, which is roughly 18 hours away.
Yes, exactly.
So right now it's about 2:00 here on the East Coast of the United States. Can you tell us what time it is where you are?
It's 8:00 in the morning, and it's Sunday morning, so we are a full day in advance.
A full day in advance. The first question I want to ask you is tell us where you're from. Tell us what city. Also tell us what college, medical school, residency that you're from, and the medical school that you went to, and what residency that you went to.
All right. Well, I'm actually from Atlanta originally, born and raised. I am actually from Southwest Atlanta, if you want to get technical. I went to undergrad at Tulane University in New Orleans. I actually majored in cell and molecular biology. And then I went on to Morehouse School of Medicine for medical school back in Atlanta near my family. After Morehouse, I actually finished my residency in OBGYN, and that was in St. Joseph's Hospital in Houston, Texas.
Okay. And you did a residency in OB?
I did, yes.
All right. Did you do any additional training, fellowship?
No. I'm just a general OBGYN.
So tell us about what happened after you finished residency. Dr. Brown finishes residency. She decides to get a job. Where was your first job?
So my first job actually was back in Georgia. I actually wanted to go back home, so I actually got a job in Athens, Georgia. I was working for a private practice, and it's about an hour and a half outside of Atlanta. I stayed there for almost 2 years and actually ended up leaving because my husband found a much better job in Phoenix, Arizona. So we actually moved to Phoenix after that. He's an anesthesiologist.
Oh, so 2 doctors.
Yes.
So you ended up going out to Arizona, and can you say the place that you went to again?
I was in Phoenix, Arizona.
How long were you out there for?
We were out in Phoenix for a very long time. Actually, I've stayed out there for the next 7 to 8 years. I did do another private practice that I did for another 2 years. And then I realized private practice wasn't for me. I kind of started to feel that there was something I was missing, and I just wasn't feeling that professional fulfillment, honestly. So after doing another 2 years of private practice, I decided that maybe I should become like a faculty physician. So I actually became a faculty physician at St. Joseph Hospital in Phoenix, Arizona. So I was, responsible for teaching residents, doing grand rounds, doing lectures, supervising them on labor and delivery, supervising them in surgery. I also did some clinic, privately, but it was mostly just kind of a faculty position. And I stayed with them for almost 5 years. So I was in Phoenix for quite some time, for 7 years, definitely.
So can you pinpoint, because you're working with residents, obviously, you have a private practice. Financially, you must have been doing okay. Can you pinpoint for us what exactly was the unfulfillment at? Where was the disconnect?
So I guess the thing is that to me, I felt like all those years I was kind of churning away and working so hard. And as most people know, whether you're in a private practice or even if you're an employed physician like I was at St. Joe's, you just really don't have a lot of downtime, a lot of off time. I was full-time, working 5 days a week, commuting in, 2 hours a day type of thing. And I just really felt like I never had any time off. And I think which makes it worse is that we are a 2-doctor family. And so with my husband being on call and working and me being on call and working, I just really felt like we didn't have a lot of time together. And so
chasing your tail.
Yeah, exactly. Vacations became very important to us because that was our only time to really spend together. So we started doing little things like taking long weekends together. I would take a Friday off and we would drive to Vegas or, go to LA or something like that. But after a while, you really wanted to have more time off. And I only had off 3 weeks of vacation a year. That's all I had for the entire year. And we just decided one year that, we're going to really maximize this. We are going to take a really big vacation. We're going to take 2 weeks off, and we're going to spend some really good time together. And that's where our first international trip came from. I had never gone out of the United States before. I didn't even own a passport until I left the United States.
What age? How old are you now at this point?
Oh, let's see. Right now I am 43. I left the United States for the very first time. That was in 2007, I believe. So that was recently as far as things go. So I got my first passport in 2007, which is. It's a stat that you hear. A lot of Americans, only I think 30% of the U.S. population actually has a passport, and when you exclude military personnel and diplomats, so it's not a lot of us out there that actually carry passports, up to date, passports. So I was one of them, but that's pretty much started my desire to kind of go overseas. We went overseas for the very first time. My very first trip out of the United States was to China, which is a random place to go for your very first time out of the country. But that was my very first trip. We went to Beijing.
Way to shoot for the stars.
I know, right? It was interesting. The way we actually went was we contacted a travel agent. We said we have a $3,000 budget. where can we go in the world? And he like totally pulled it out the box and was like, hey, you want to go to China for 9 days? And we're like, sure. So
really?
we did that.
Okay.
A $3,000 budget, believe it or not. But, and it opened my eyes to like how big and how amazing the world is. And it just really kind of got me like yearning to go, again and somewhere else. So from that point on, we planned a trip every single year. So we went to China one year. The next year we went to Brazil. The next year we went to South Africa. And the next year we went to Australia and New Zealand. And that kind of is when things shifted for me significantly.
Well, since you're in New Zealand, did you ever come back from that first trip, or did you come back multiple times?
Well, New Zealand, believe it or not, was actually our last kind of international trip together. That was in 2009. And at that point, I kind of felt like at work, I felt like I just really still wasn't getting that time off to spend with my husband. I really felt that I wanted more time like off to actually enjoy life. And I just kind of felt like that 3 weeks just was not enough to actually enjoy life. And I didn't have a work-life balance. I just really felt like there was something wrong. And there were some things going on at work that were not really making me happy. I specifically got that job to become a faculty physician and work with residents exclusively and to not have a large private practice. And my job was kind of moving towards wanting to market us as private physicians and wanting me to really take that role as a private physician again. And I definitely was against that. And so I kind of came to an impasse where I didn't want to do that. And I felt myself slipping away again. And that's when we made the decision. We were like,
right.
what? There's got to be a better way. And because we had just come back from Australia and New Zealand and actually had met American expatriates there and actually talked to some people that knew American physicians and talked to actually an American physician that was there, I was done. I was like, well, if she can do it, why can't we? And that was it. That was it.
Okay. So you went to New Zealand, you met expatriates, you come back to the United States. Take us through that process where you and your husband said, you know what, we're going to consider doing this on a full-time basis. Like, was that the type of conversation you had, or make us like a fly on the wall during this conversation?
So after we came back from our trip to Australia and New Zealand, I think something had totally shifted in both of us, where we were coming back and we were unhappy about coming back. And everybody's a little bummed when you come back from a trip, but this was a little bit more palpable. Like, we really felt like, I don't want to go back to do this, and I can't do this for the next 20 years. And that's the actual statement I made to my husband. I said, I cannot do this for another 20 years. But we had to. We have, before we retire, you got to work for another 20 years. So, at that point, we're sitting here at a crossroads, like trying to figure out, like, what are we going to do for the next 20 years of our lives, and how are we going to work as physicians? And I wanted to do something different. And he was totally on board. He's like, you are so right. There's different ways to practice medicine, and I think we should explore this. And so I gave my notice at my job. And, of course, they all thought I was kind of crazy.
Yeah, that's what I want to know. So what was that conversation like with people at your job when you told them that, hey, I'm resigning? And was it I'm resigning and I'm going to New Zealand, or was it just I'm just resigning?
It was, I'm resigning and I'm going to do locums in New Zealand, because at the time we didn't know that there was an option to do something permanent. So we had signed up for a locums company, and they told us that they can easily get us something in New Zealand. So I told the job, I was like, I'm resigning. Of course, they asked me why, and I explained to them all the different reasons why I was unhappy, and most of them was because of the work-life balance, which of course they could not fix. And, I told them, I'm doing locums in New Zealand. And they were like, why? Where is that? And, a lot of that kind of thing. So
glazed over their eyes, and what are you doing?
So, that's actually how the conversation went. So we did actually resign our jobs. And the thing at that point is we were like, we had done very well with our money. We are very good savers. We have always believed in saving lots and lots of money and living well below our means. So at that point, we had a very nice cushion, And we still didn't have, everything set up in New Zealand yet. We were still waiting for them to kind of find us jobs. And so we decided, since we have this time and we have some money, we're going to travel some more. And my husband and I went on a round-the-world trip, and we spent 6 months traveling around the world together.
6 months. Wow.
Yes. It was seriously like the best time of my life.
So when you say that you had some savings, without getting into too much specifics into your own pocket, basically, but in terms of an emergency fund or in terms of month savings, did you have like 1, 2, 3, maybe even 6 months of savings, or how much did you have back up?
We had a year, more than a year probably.
A year. Wow.
Because we lived so far below our means that we had a lot of money saved up. For example, we're a two-physician household. We only lived off of one salary. The other salary was saved completely. So
yeah, that's how it is in our household. We live off of one person's household,
one salary.
One salary.
We pretend like the other person does not even exist. So, and honestly, that was not my design. That's my husband. I have to give him all the credit. I was a terrible saver when he met me, like terrible. Like I was the kind of chick that would bounce checks like on a regular basis.
Oh, so Bank of America loves you.
They did.
All the overdraft fees.
They love me. So that was the kind of person I was. But he taught me the importance of savings, and he also taught me what you can do when you do save, and that was like one of the biggest lessons. And I will definitely, shout that from a mountaintop to anyone that will listen, because it totally changed my life. That savings and how he taught me to save was the reason why we were able to travel for 6 months. And then the funny thing is, we even traveled on 6 months, but we still did it on a budget. It didn't even spend that much money. People will still not believe us when we tell them how much we spent, and they're like, "That's impossible." Like, no, seriously, this is all we spent. So.
I think it's interesting you mentioned that, because from a financial perspective, I mean, you can attest to this. I can attest to this. We get no training whatsoever in finances, even basic things such as, expenses and income, trying to make a spreadsheet. It's really interesting that you mentioned that, because I know, for example, when I met my wife, from my savings standpoint, savings was something that I did in my mind. I didn't keep it, in a spreadsheet. I didn't keep an account of all of that stuff. And once we combined our finances together and put things on a spreadsheet, or actually made a budget, we were so much more in control of our finances. We actually told our money what to do instead of the money telling us what to do. So I find it amazing that you mentioned that.
Exactly. I totally agree.
So once you did your world tour and you ended up in New Zealand,
yes.
When you did your world tour, you did that for about a year?
So no, we were gone for 6 months. So after after we stopped working, like January of 2010, we immediately left the United States and literally just started traveling. And we hit like 27 countries in a 6 month kind of time period. So it was kind of a hectic, sometimes kind of, travel schedule, but we fit it all in. And during the trip, we were actually contacted by a locums company and told us they found jobs for us in New Zealand. So literally during the trip, we're like faxing CVs and, medical licenses and stuff. Thankfully, we bought all that stuff with us because we knew we were going to, have to find a job. And so we bought a lot of our documents with us. So, we're faxing stuff from a hotel in, Barcelona to like the locums company. And by the time we finished our trip, we came back to the United States in June of 2010. By July 2010, I was in New Zealand because they wanted me to start as soon as possible. We needed OB like yesterday. So they begged me to come immediately. So I started in July 2010. And then Bruce kind of finished up at the house, kind of closed everything up, kind of thing. And then he actually followed me in August of 2010. So I was there for a couple of months by myself working. And that, we were there for an entire year and a half working in New Zealand. So, so it was really good.
So what was the first day like going into a hospital in New Zealand and not going to visit, not going to be a patient, but you're actually in control of what's going on? You're the physician. What was that like?
So it was crazy, but like most physicians, I'm super type A. So I didn't go in completely blind. I'd done a lot of reading on their health system. I just got online and started reading, some of their, health, documents and just anything I could find published by the, New Zealand government. And I learned a lot about their system. And I also talked to people in the department. And interesting enough, the department I started working at was all American, which is a whole nother story because there's a lot of American physicians here. So it's not like you're like Wild Wild West, you're the first one. That's usually not going to be the case. There's probably going to be some other American physicians that will kind of help transition you. And that's exactly what I had. So it wasn't as bad as, kind of just walking in blind kind of thing. But I did get a chance to read and talk to people, kind of learn how their system was different, but it still doesn't prepare you for actually being in it. So the actual medicine is the same. Medicine is the same. You take care of patients. I'm an obstetrician. I deliver babies. That is going to be the same pretty much no matter where you are. But how they do things as far as what actual prescriptions you can write, what the government will cover, working in their healthcare system because they have a nationalized health system. Those types of things, those nuances I had to learn. So quite honestly, I would say the first 6 months, I walked around with like a little notebook on me at all times. So I scribbled down notes when I learned something new or learned something that was unique to New Zealand so that I would know what to do next time kind of thing. So it was definitely a learning curve.
Okay, because that leads into my next question. So I just wanted to know, how does the New Zealand health system compare to the United States system? For example, like what's your lifestyle like now compared to when you were back in the States? Your schedule, your pay, what's it like interacting with patients, all of that. What's the big difference?
Well, let's see. Quite honestly, it's almost like you have to take everything that you know about the U.S. training and health system and just throw it away, because that's the best way I explain to physicians coming here. The harder you search for commonalities, the more frustrated you will be because it is so incredibly different. On every single level is so different. So, for example, and starting with the reason why I left was a work-life balance. I was searching for that. I really wanted to spend more time with my husband, who's also a physician, is also taking call. It can be very difficult when you're both out of the house a lot. So for us, having, quality time off was so critical. And in New Zealand, like a lot of other first world nations, physicians are unionized, which means we actually have rights that the hospital or your job cannot take away from you. One of the things that
Are you serious?
Yeah. They have it in the UK, and there are a lot of places. Australia, it's like we're the only ones that don't, but kind of thing. But so as a part of the
healthcare
union,
the healthcare system is nationalized, and the physicians are unionized above that also. Wow.
Exactly. So as a part of the physician union, they have guaranteed that all physicians have a set benefit package. All of us get the same thing. There's no secret or surprise what I get compared to like somebody else. It doesn't matter what specialty or how many years of training you've had. All of us get 6 weeks of vacation a year. All of us get 2 weeks of CME leave a year.
6 weeks of vacation?
Yes. And 2 weeks
That's what I heard.
Wow. Yes, and we get 2 weeks of CME leave.
Okay.
And this is, of course, for full-time physicians. Obviously, if you're part-time, it's prorated. So that's, obviously common sense. But, yeah, so for a full-time physician, that's what you're getting, and that's what you're working with. You also get sick leave. And you also get a very generous maternity leave. So, a physician that, has a baby, she could be off for 6 months paid, and then she could take another 6 months off unpaid if she desires. So she could take a whole year off if she desired to be at home with her baby. So we have all these.
Wait, stop. You got it. Wait, hold on a second. Wait. Because I know my wife mentioned this to me, but I really wasn't paying attention when she mentioned that. So once again, say that again. How long for maternity leave?
So you get 24 paid weeks off for maternity leave. So that's 6 months. Plus you could take another 6 months unpaid. So you get a total of 1 year off, and your job is guaranteed. So you don't have to worry about losing it or them kicking you to the curb or anything like that. So yeah, that is what you get. And this is not unique. You know, a lot of other countries do this. Like in Europe, actually, some places in Europe, they have even better leave packages. So you look at France and Sweden and Denmark and, you know, those kind of places, you get leave packages that are very generous for maternity benefits and paternity benefits. So there is a such thing as paternal leave too.
You know, I always heard that the United States lagged behind other countries in terms of maternity leave and paternity leave. I just didn't know that was such a vast difference.
We are the only country that does not offer paid maternity leave. There's only actually 2 in the world, and one is in Africa. So I think Burkina Faso. So we are so far behind, it's ridiculous. As far as offering paid and protected maternity leave for women. So yeah, it's really eye-opening to see the kind of benefits that you get in other places. And that's kind of the thing that I was looking for. When I talk about a work-life balance, we're looking at like all aspects of your work and life. You know what I mean? So, you know, it's just not, you know, what about a sick parent? You know, you could take sick leave here, and it doesn't have to be you that's sick. That blew my mind. Like, if my child is sick and I need to be off, that I can use my sick leave to do that. I don't have to just be like begging to be off and freaking out and that kind of thing. It really makes sense here. And they just really subscribe to the thing. If you're happy, you're going to work well. And that's all there is to it. It's not like a magical formula. If you're happy, you're going to be a happy worker. And that's all there is to it.
And it's not like we're robots. I think that's the standpoint that people believe here in the United States. It's physicians are robots. They're not connected to a social life whatsoever. Nothing affects them outside of the hospital. But it looks like, you know, and that thought process is kind of archaic compared to what you're telling me. You know, the lifestyle, or at least the expectation is of physicians, at least in New Zealand or in other countries
Right.
outside the United States.
Right, exactly. But and to go back to your question about the things that are different, because this is a nationalized health system, that means every New Zealand citizen, every New Zealand permanent resident, or, you know, basically like a green card holder, is entitled to free health care. Now, there's good points and bad points about it. I have a nice perspective because I'm coming from a system that is completely different from theirs. But the parts that I see that are beautiful about it is that you cannot get bankrupted by needing health care. That even if you have a heart attack or a stroke or, unfortunately, cancer or need a transplant, you're not going to go broke because it's free. Any test that I order on a patient, any surgery I do on a patient, any examination I do on a patient is free. I don't have to get a prior authorization. I don't have to do any of those things. I just can take care of the whole patient. And I don't have to worry about how much this will cost them or if there's a cheaper method that I can offer them type of thing. So it's the benefit of being a physician in that type of system where I get to kind of offer care and not have to worry about the business aspect. There is no such thing as billing and coding here for physicians. So when I do something on a patient, I write a note, and that's pretty much all I do. Yes, there's no billing and coding. There's no such thing as an ICD-10. None of that doesn't exist in our world.
Wow.
I just take care of patients. It's just like being a physician to me and talking to older physicians in the United States. It's like being a physician back in the 1950s and 60s, you know, before there was Cigna and United Healthcare and, you know, coding and billing and those types of things. It's way before all of that, where you just saw a patient, you take care of them, you write a note and a plan, and that's it. That's it. It's really all there is that you have to do. And yeah, it's a very streamlined process. I mean, we do have like an electronic kind of system that has your notes uploaded into it. So it's very modern. We do have, you know, labs that are uploaded into a computer system, but you don't use it for billing. You don't use it for typing your notes per se. It's not that at all. It's just really kind of an electronic record, so you can kind of see the notes once they've been literally uploaded into the system. So it's not at all what we use back home.
Now, okay, so that was all the good. Is there anything that's really bad or something that really stands out that's a negative that in terms of the system that you're working in right now?
Yes, so that's the other thing. Now, I would tell people I'm very honest. I'm never like going to be the person that tells you, oh my God, it's so great over here. You know, you got to come. I won't tell people that because not everybody is cut out to be here.
I've already packed my bags already. My bag's already packed.
There's certain things that you might not like, and it goes from everything from, social aspects all the way down. So, when I talk about social or personal aspects, I am very, very, very far away from my friends and family. We are talking, we're 18 hours apart. It's sometimes it can be very difficult when you're away from your support. Your mom and dad aren't going to want to just pick up and move to New Zealand. It just doesn't work that way. So when we make this decision, we made it based on our family and what would be best for us. And you kind of have to kind of plan out what you're going to do about those other relationships and how often are you going to go home, and, do you have friends and family that will be willing to travel and come see you? So there's a lot of things that you will miss out on. And I'm not going to be able to go to everyone's wedding or, christenings or graduations and everything. Financially, it just doesn't make sense. So there's going to be some things that you have to be willing to sacrifice. And, some people can't do that. Some people can't just not see their friends and family, but like once or twice a year. And that's fine. The other thing is that you are going to be a serious minority here. I mean, I joke and everything and say about, how many African Americans might be here, but quite honestly, it's probably less than, a couple of hundred in the whole country of 4+ million people. So, and I probably know most of them.
Right.
So I think
they're
I know
all in the network.
All of us. We all know each other kind of thing. So, that's another issue that some people might not be used to. And it's funny that people think that I'm okay with it because I'm from Atlanta. I'm from a very predominant African-American city, and for me to be somewhere that there are no other African-Americans, people are like, are you okay with that? No, I'm fine. So I don't, you just once again, these are sacrifices and things that you have to kind of decide whether or not you'll be okay with this. But in the medicine aspect, that's the thing about the socialized system that you have to be okay with. Everybody has free health care, but that means there is going to be a wait for services. So you got 4 million plus people using all these services, but there's only so many physicians. So that means if I want to send you to see a dermatologist, there's a very good chance you might be waiting for 6 months before you see that dermatologist, which at first I thought was just horrific. But interesting enough, I tried to do that back home to see a specialist at one point, and they had like a 4-month wait list.
Yeah, you're waiting that long anyway in the United States also.
Exactly. And you're seeing a private physician, you're paying, and you still wait that long. So it's funny that at first I thought it was just like so horrendous, and then I realized, hey, back home for certain specialists, you probably could be waiting to see people too, so it's not that off. But the wait is one thing that you will hear grumblings about. It might not be that fast and easy to get in to see things, especially if you have what's considered a minor problem.
That's what I was going to ask. So the wait is mainly for chronic issues, though, right?
Yes,
not
exactly,
acute. Like
exactly.
If you get shot, if you get shot in the arm, or if you got acute appendicitis, it's going to be taken care of immediately.
You're going straight to the hospital. Yeah, you get
just for the record, everyone.
It's just like back home. Yes, just like back home. But like say for example, things like cancer, there's never anything longer than a 2-week wait to see a specialist. So it works very quickly. And I would probably
I'm glad you clarified that.
Probably just as fast as back home, if not faster. I have had a woman come into my clinic. I had a suspicion she had cancer. From the time I saw her, like the 1st of December, to the time she actually had her surgery was like 20 days. Like the woman had her surgery on Christmas Eve. Like they were not playing. She got seen by me, a gynecologist, and had her surgery done within 24 days. So it goes very, very quickly, and I would hazard to say that it's just as fast as the United States when we're talking about acute, serious issues. But if it's something chronic, then you could be waiting for a very, very long time. So, it is definitely a wait, and people do grumble about it. And I don't think a lot of Americans would really appreciate that because we're used to having things done right now. But some of us are used to waiting, too, because if you're in a place where there's not a lot of physicians, you're going to be waiting, too. So, yeah.
We've covered as much with the clinical aspects as possible, and now if you allow me, I'd like to get into like the nitty gritty of basically personal life.
Mm-hmm.
My next question is, and you kind of talked about it a little bit, as a woman of color, what's your experience in New Zealand from a career standpoint, from a community standpoint, and are there any major differences in how you're living right now in comparison to how life was back in the United States?
I would say that there are really no issues being a person of color here, specifically African American. I can, of course, only speak on our own experience. This country doesn't have the same history as the United States. Now, it is a colony of the United Kingdom, or excuse me, it was. So it's a commonwealth, I should say, of the United Kingdom. So it's very English, and their history, most people can trace their roots directly back to either England, Ireland, or Scotland. And so you have that very kind of English sensibility kind of thing, but they don't have that same history as we do in the United States. So they don't have a lot of preconceived notions or kind of I don't want to say pre-racist ideas, but it's really, they don't have that same notion and history as we do in the United States. So there was no Jim Crow. There wasn't the same type of history we have as we do in the United States. So that being said, you are treated very differently than I find you in the United States. In fact, I find people more open, more welcoming, and more interested in you because you are a person of color, because most of the time they've never met a person of color. Most people have never met, someone who is, Hispanic American or African American. So when they meet us, they're so incredibly interested in our story, who we are, our culture. So I think it's very open and welcoming, and I love that. I kind of feel like we're almost ambassadors for our race here because we teach people a lot about the African American experience. So it's definitely not a antagonistic relationship. And it's definitely there's definitely no fear. In fact, it's more of a really open kind of educational experience here. So.
All right, Dr. Brown, no pressure. Represent us right.
I know, right? I'm teaching these people about, I've been feeding these people, so now all my Kiwi friends know what a sweet potato pie tastes like. They know what cornbread is. I've totally done a crash course of soul food here.
Do they have Patti LaBelle pies over there?
They do not. They don't have anything. I have to make everything from scratch, so I am like a 10 times better cook than I was before I got here. I was good before, but I'm awesome now because I have to make everything from scratch. There is no Jiffy cornbread at the store. There's none of that. I have to make my stuff from scratch.
Oh, Jiffy cornbread. That's a deal breaker for me.
I know.
Let me ask you another question then. So what about in your family, specifically of your family, your husband, you have a child, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. So is there anything in your family that has changed for better or even for worse now that you're in New Zealand?
So I would say for better, it's once again, I won't sugarcoat things, but I'll be honest with this one. This one is mostly better. There's really not worses, if that makes sense. The for better part is that we are present. We are here a lot. We are actually a part of my son's life, so much so that his whole rearing, his last 2 years of his life here have been basically his parents around him at all times, which is beautiful considering that we had to have a live-in nanny when we were in the United States because we worked so much and we were always kind of, gone or on call kind of thing. So I kind of feel like these last 2 years were kind of like a do-over because I feel that we're both more present. I have a lot of time at home with him. I have a wonderful schedule. I just feel like I'm literally present more, and I'm here for more milestones and more, activities. And it's not that when is mommy coming home, it's like, oh, she's here again kind of thing. So I really do feel like this has improved our family life so much. It's kind of, ridiculous that we're always around each other. Now, I guess the not so good side about it is that when you are somewhere so far away and you don't have a lot of friends and a lot of structure, it's just kind of you're your little nuclear family is just kind of it. And so you're kind of wow, we're still here staring at each other, it's like a 4-day weekend and we're still staring at each other kind of thing. So you don't get that chance to kind of, I'm going to run off to the mall and I'm going to go hang out with my girls and, that kind of thing. So you don't have that, opportunity to necessarily socialize with as much or as many people as you did back home. We do have friends here, but of course when you're in Atlanta or, Houston or whatever, you have 40, 50 people to hang out with kind of things. So it's not quite the same. And you don't get a chance to spend as much time, like I said, with your family when you're not, able to travel as much. But I would say for my family and marriage standpoint, this place has been like awesome. It really has been.
It sounds like it. In terms of your work-life balance, because obviously in the United States, it looks like, or it sounded like, the balance was more shifted towards work, not much towards a social life. And now that you're in New Zealand, it looks like you have more of a balance. And I would even say, from an outside looking in, you can tell me if I'm wrong, it seems like you have more emphasis on your family life. Is there any backlash at work with this type of lifestyle, or is this something that everybody has, everybody feels the same way, everybody makes sure that, their family life is well taken care of, and then work kind of comes second? Or is it similar to the United States?
No, it's the latter. It's people here, their whole mindset is different. It's shifted. It's not at all like it is in the United States. I was so used to hoarding my vacation time in the United States because we only had 3 weeks per year. So you're not going to blow that doing, dumb stuff. So I would hoard it, and just keep it as long as possible. And my first time when we were here in New Zealand, I got called into my head of department's office after being there for 3 months. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I messed up. These people want me to leave, kind of thing. And she sits me down and she says, we're very concerned. You've been here for 3 months and you haven't taken any vacation. And I'm looking at her like, are you kidding me right now?
What? Are you serious?
Yeah, they were concerned about my well-being.
Wow.
So I'm like, are you kidding? So to them, you have a life outside the hospital, and you actually are a person and a physician. And I'm a mother and a physician, and so they actually look at that. And so I have taken off sick days because my son was sick, and I've not had, no one's batted an eye. I feel like I'm very well supported, and I've never felt that before with my job. It's a very refreshing feeling that if something happened, no one would be mad at me, nor would my job be in jeopardy or danger. And one of the questions someone asked me, which is a really good question, once again, a hard question, they're like, you're so far away from your family, and your parents are elderly, and my parents are in their 70s. And they're like, you were literally, like you said, a 20-hour trip away from Atlanta. How would you get to Atlanta if your parents fell ill or you needed to get there and spend some time with them? You're so far away. And we made that as a conscious, we literally broke all these things down, basically the risk and benefits, the good and bad, when we decided to move here. And that's actually one of the things that actually made us want to come here, because I have actually seen with my own eyes that if a person experiences a loss or has a sick family member in the United States and has to leave, these people will let it happen, and it won't be like a penalty or when are you coming back or I can't believe you're doing this and, when is your mother going to get better kind of thing. And so I've actually seen people leave for 4 and 6 weeks and go home and get affairs in order and take care of ailing family members and come back to their job and no one be mad at them. These people, they understand that you are a living, breathing soul with people that love you and need you, and don't seem to have an issue with that. And I totally appreciate that. So when we were thinking about coming out here, I actually seriously thought about that. It's like something, God forbid, happened to one of my parents. I could leave this job tomorrow, go home to Atlanta and spend as much time as I needed, and I would have my job to come back to, and they would not be harassing me and telling me, oh, you only got 2 days off to bury your parent, hurry up and come back. That would not happen here. And I really appreciate the fact that these people believe that, you're a whole person. You are a whole person. They all think that way. They all think that they will use up every last single drop of their vacation. Some people actually will sometimes take more and just go with leave without pay. But I am using up all my 6 weeks of vacation. Let's put it that way. I am really I'm really using it and enjoying every minute of it.
Now, what's your advice for other physicians who are considering moving abroad?
My advice is honestly, you have to be true to yourself. Like I was saying before, this isn't for everybody. Some people can't appreciate or they won't like how slow things are here. They won't appreciate the fact that the government has certain medications that they offer, and that's it. And you can't write for something that they don't have here. And even if you like it and you use it all your life, if the New Zealand government doesn't, subsidize or have it, You just can't use it. And there's some physicians that are we're so much in control, so used to being in control that they can't relinquish that, and it might be very difficult for them. And you have to be really honest that this system is so very different from what you're used to. You might not be okay with working in it. It might stress you out or drive you nuts. I honestly would think that before you commit to doing something long term, I would never recommend an American physician come straight off the bat and take a permanent position. I would recommend maybe doing a locum first. At least that way you can dip your toes in, see how you feel about living this far away, that type of thing. But I would definitely say do your research. This is not the only place that you could work. I mean, my husband and I looked at other places. We looked at Canada. We looked at even working in, we looked at working in the UK. We even looked at working in certain places in Europe, in the Netherlands. So we looked at a lot of different places. But, when it came down to it, we needed something that was going to be a little bit more, I guess, common, close to home, something that was very similar. And for us, an English-speaking country was going to be the easiest thing rather than have to battle with language plus culture. But I would definitely say you really have to do your research before you kind of take that leap.
Okay, so you've been in New Zealand, or at least you've been traveling, starting the process of basically disconnecting yourself from the United States, roughly around 2010. So
Yes.
You're roughly about 6 years out from doing this. My next question is, what advice would you have given yourself 10 years ago? So this is Dr. Carmen Brown as a resident, or even Dr. Carmen Brown as a medical student. What advice would you have given yourself, like what you know now, based off of where you were back then as a resident or even as a medical student?
I would have given myself the advice of looking at the true and different options as far as practicing medicine. And I think we mentioned before that as physicians, we don't really get a lot of information about finances and how to manage our finances.
Not at all.
But in the same way, we don't get a lot of information about different practice styles. And that's one of the things I'm proud of myself, that when I was on faculty at St. Joe's, I actually did several lectures on different types of practice, because I didn't want my residents to be farmed into thinking that you graduate, you go into private practice, because that's not the only way you have to do it. And so I wanted to make sure that they knew there were other options out there, and I wish that I had have known there were other options out there, that you could do. I didn't know there was a such thing as an OB hospitalist, and honestly, back then there wasn't. I mean, when I started, there was no such thing as an actual laborist or OB hospitalist. But now there's so many different options. You can do an MPH and actually do, a fellowship in sexual health. You can work overseas for the World Health Organization. You could do so many different things, and I don't think that we're necessarily exposed to that. So I wish my old self, my new self, could have told my old self to kind of look into the different options that are available rather than just kind of put the blinders on and just do what everybody else does. That would have saved me a lot of time, because I feel like I spent 5 years in private practice just unhappy, because it just wasn't for me. I love my patients. I love the continuity of care. I love taking care of those women, and I just love that aspect of it, but I didn't love what it did to my life at home, So I kind of felt like I had to sacrifice myself to give to others, and it wore me down. It took 5 years off of my life. So, unfortunately, it wasn't right for me, and it was great for the patients, and I did a great job, and I love my patients, but it hurt me, So I really wish I had known there was alternative ways to practice medicine.
Well, that's real talk, and I appreciate your honesty on that question.
No problem.
So what about so we've given advice to young Dr. Carmen Brown, student Dr. Carmen Brown, but what about you meet a medical student, or even you meet a resident, or even you meet an attending out there who's saying, you know what, I want to be just like you, or I want to do exactly what you're doing, but you know what, I have A, I have B, I have Z, all these different excuses. They are too afraid to take the next leap. Is there anything that you can impart on them to get them to the next level?
I would definitely say, if they can, I would recommend that they travel to the place that they're considering on working. So if they're wanting to, work in the UK, go to Ireland, go to England, and, check it out, see how it feels. I would also say that if they can find a physician, an American physician that's working there, and kind of use them as a mentor, or, just, asking them questions, that would be optimal because you'd learn a little bit more. And I would honestly say that it is doable. I can't stand when people say, oh, that's impossible. Oh, I can't do that because I have blank. And it's funny because I'm looking at these people like, you thinking like, I don't have parents. I have parents too. Like I've heard all kinds of excuses. Like people say, oh, I have parents, or I have bills back home, or I have this, or I have that. Now, finances I can't quite get too far into because I understand everybody has something different going on. I totally appreciate that. But if someone really wants to make something happen, you're going to find a way. So I really believe if they're that interested in doing this, you really reach out to somebody who's doing that and ask them. I will be very honest. I've answered, I cannot tell you, like hundreds and hundreds of messages over the last several months of people who just reached out to me, via Facebook and that type of thing. Like, I heard you're in New Zealand. Can you tell me how you did? I heard you in New Zealand. Could I do that if I have X, Y, and Z going on in my life? So I've actually talked to lots of people about their particular situations, and some people I've been honest with and told, no, you can't do it. I have a husband that has a felony on his record. Can we come? Like, probably not, but you can look into it. And, so I kind of, I've definitely fielded lots of questions, and some of them have been like a negative, but some of them have been very positive. I've told them, you need to just take that leap. You can do it. In most cases, barring like those kind of unique circumstances, you can actually do this. I'm not special. I'm not, different from anybody else. I'm just a girl I'm not from Atlanta. I'm from Southwest Atlanta. I am not different. So it
come on,
can
Dr.
happen.
Brown, give yourself more credit. Give yourself more credit.
But I know where I'm from. I know this is not an impossibility. It can be done.
So you don't ever miss the varsity?
Oh God, yes. We sit here and watch Food Network, and I sit there and like fixate on things that I miss. And it's funny because when I went home the last time, I went to a conference in San Francisco, and I spent weeks poring over restaurants and like stuff at Target because I was like, I can't wait to go to Target. I can't wait to go here. And so one of the first things I had was a grilled cheese sandwich, like one of those big giant ones on Texas toast. It was hilarious. Right. So yeah, I do fixate on food, and I do miss certain things. I miss that grease.
For audience members who are listening to this, the Varsity is a famous hot dog restaurant in the heart of Atlanta.
Yes.
It's one of those places that you have to go to. So
yes, please do go to the Varsity. Bring me food.
Well, right. Now, Dr. Brown, I did my residency in Atlanta at Morehouse, actually, at Grady.
Oh, wonderful.
So that's why I'm pretty familiar with everything that you're talking about. For me, my spot is Waffle House. So.
Oh my God, I miss that too. Oh my God, I miss Waffle House too.
Talk about grease.
Oh yes.
Here's some questions that I have for you. This is kind of rapid fire questions.
Mm-hmm.
What's next for you and your family? Like what's going to be the next thing that you are going to accomplish, or the biggest thing, or the next thing that you're really excited about? Obviously, moving from the United States to New Zealand is a huge feat. But what's next for you? What is it that we need to be watching out from the Browns in terms of what you're going to do over the next 5 or even 10 years?
Let's see. So actually, two things. One is that I think because I didn't realize how interested people were in our situation, I used to keep a blog just for friends and family back home, but I've gotten so much kind of response from people asking me about how life is and wanting to kind of know what's going on. I've actually been working with someone on like rebranding the blog. I'm featured on expatblogs.com, and I'm like really kind of working on that to kind of make it more of a kind of branded thing where I'm actually publishing more. I love writing, and that was always something that used to be really good at. And so now that I actually have time, I'm actually going to be hopefully writing more, publishing more on our blog, and kind of telling people a little bit more, not only about what it's like to be an African-American expatriate, but also about traveling with a young child and those types of things. So that's one thing. The other thing is that talking about cooking, we have really created a huge ripple pretty much here with our cooking. And one of the things that my husband was actually kicking around is actually he was thinking about starting a restaurant. It's very small scale initially, probably maybe just like a little kind of food truck kind of thing. But that's one of the things that we're thinking about doing possibly in the next like 5 to 10 years.
Wow. Okay.
We might actually be out of medicine.
This is going to be the last question of the interview. Okay. It's a phrase that I've been throwing around on Twitter, where I throw it to different physicians, and it's basically a statement that's emphasizing the fact that they're a physician, but also at the same time, a physician or them being a physician doesn't describe who they are from a 100% standpoint, right? So this statement that I'm going to say to you, I want you to complete it. No pressure. Just give me your best answer. It's, I'm not just a doc, I'm a blank. And you can put whatever answer you want there. But I think it'd be interesting to hear, or at least the audience members to hear, what's your thoughts on, I'm not just a doc, I'm a, and you can fill in the blank.
Wow. Wow, I'm not, wow, that's a good one. So, of course, I want to say, of course, I'm a mother and a wife, but beyond
that's
that,
excellent.
I'm not just a I'm not just a physician, and I think that's the thing. Being a wife and a mother is what drove me to go so far away from, my comfort zone and where I've lived all my life, the United States, my home. But on top of that, I'm a student of the world. I'm a traveler, and I love being international.
That's a perfect answer.
Oh, cool. I'm like, did I pass?
That's a perfect answer. Well, I'm actually a big fan of, I don't know if you've ever heard of Lewis Howes. He's a lifestyle entrepreneur in the United States. He has a podcast called The School of Greatness. And one of the things that he does on his podcast is he actually acknowledges all of his guests. And I'm going to steal, that idea from him, because I think it's a great idea in terms of, at least just in terms of building a level of rapport between physicians in terms of doing things outside of clinical medicine. So I wanted to just take time to just acknowledge you on what you've been able to do over the past 6 years. I mean, this is something that truly is unique. This is something that truly is outside of the box. And I know it took a lot of risk to do something like this. But I'm amazed. My wife is amazed. And I'm sure a lot of the people who are on Mocha Docs are amazed by your story. And I just wanted to acknowledge and applaud you for what you've done. You've done an amazing and great job. And I just wanted to say thank you very much for joining us on this podcast.
Not a problem. It's my pleasure. And thank you so much for having me. I really do appreciate this.
And that's a wrap. That's it. Look, the first ever podcast is now behind us. I am really excited to bring more content, more interviews to you all. So listen, I need you to be as interactive as possible. Send your reviews, whether they're negative, positive, constructive, doesn't matter. Leave your reviews on Stitcher, on iTunes. You could also contact me directly at DocsOTB at my Twitter handle, which is at DocsOTB, DocsOTB. Okay. If there's anybody that you know who may be a good candidate to be on the show, someone that you've always wanted to hear from, nominate them. Send me an email at docsotb@gmail.com. You never know. You may find your favorite person that you always wanted to hear from on the show. Also, I'm looking to get somewhere in the range of 1 to 2 episodes a month. So make sure you subscribe. I'm going to try to fill you with as much content as possible. And you never know. Maybe we go to 3, 4. Who knows? All right. Now, if this message has resonated with you, the whole concept of not just being a doc, express yourself on Twitter. Send me a message at DocsOTB with the hashtag, I'm not just a doc, I'm a blank, and fill in the blank. It could be, I'm a mother. Carmen Brown put down, I'm a world traveler. Whatever you want, send me that message and let's get a movement started. Okay. So listen, we're going to end the show. Until next time, guys, remember to live outside the box.